Hey, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you are keeping safe and well wherever you are. Today's video is one I've been meaning to film for a little while, but it's a tough one. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and as someone who does record videos about psychology and mental health, you would think that I would have posted something by now, but I've been trying to work out where this fits in with that. And I guess one of the main reasons why I started my channel was because I wanted to share my experiences and my story. I believe that it's only by sharing our stories that we can end things like stigma, which is still really prevalent throughout mental health practice and mental health treatment and mental health awareness. So yeah, that was kind of a driver behind me starting my channel. And although I had planned on sharing this story, I hadn't actually planned on sharing it now, but with it being Suicide Prevention Month, I kind of felt like it was the time to do so. Any kind of action is better than no action, and if this is a rambly, messy video, then I'm gonna apologize, but I do that in every video because psychology and mental health is not really that simple. You can't simplify it that well, and it's almost an insult to do so. So this is probably going to be a bit of a messy one again. Yay! But also that's kind of why it's perhaps a little bit more somber. Judging by the thumbnail and the title, you already know what I'm going to go into. So I'm going to discuss my own experience through an attempted suicide. Obviously, I'm going to put in here a massive trigger warning that this is going to discuss suicide. It's going to discuss mindset during that point in time. It's going to talk about what happened. And I'm trying to think if there's other stuff that I need to kind of trigger warning, but what I'll do is, obviously this is before I've recorded it, so what I'll do is I'll put in the description box below the full trigger warning bit so you guys can check that, make sure you're okay to carry on watching. I will also put in the description box below kind of timestamps when I cover different things. So if you just want to listen about, what exactly happened, then I'll put that down below in a very narrative way. If you want to listen to the kind of mindset stuff around it, and if you want to listen to stuff afterwards, I'll put the timestamps down below and you can skip forward and back as you want to. So I'm going to tell you the narrative on my own attempted suicide. And the reason why I think it's important to have these discussions is because nowadays I often meet people who are surprised when it kind of comes up in conversation, and I'm quite an open person, so I will discuss it. And people are often really shocked because I don't seem like the type of person who would have attempted to take my own life. And I have massively changed as a person since then. But I think it's really important that we open up these conversations so that people realise there is no set mould for mental ill health. There's no way that it looks, there's no way that it presents. People are adapted really, really well to hiding their inner world from others. And I think that it's important for those people who feel that they can be open about this stuff to be open about this stuff, because then it brings it to light, and perhaps other people may feel safer in how they feel. Perhaps other people won't feel alone. Perhaps other people may seek help, and perhaps people may grow greater empathy towards those who have mental ill health. So that's why I'm recording this. I guess the best way to begin this is to kind of give you a bit of context and background, just so that you can see that this kind of stuff can happen to anybody. I had married basically my teenage sweetheart, I suppose, from an outsider's perspective. I'd been married for 6.5 years. I'd been with my husband for 12, I think, at the time. We had 2 children. He had a good job. I was a stay-at-home mum. I also had a part-time job that was very customer focused. I was happy at work. I had good jobs up until taking time out to become a mum and raise a family. I achieved academically. I was studying for a degree. In fact, I'd actually just got my degree. So I'd got my degree the year before. So I guess if you want to kind of tick the boxes on what society thinks is success, I could tick a lot of them. I met the guy, I had great kids, I had a great family support network. I had some very close friends, not a huge amount of friends, but I had some very close friends. Academically, I'd done well. Employment-wise, I'd done well. We weren't in financial difficulties. There wasn't a huge amount of stress in my life. Obviously, I'm a very privileged white Western European woman, so there wasn't any issues with housing. I didn't live in a poor area. We lived in, town in the countryside. There wasn't high rates of crime or anything like that that would be contributing factors for environmental stress. Just to give you that background. However, that was the presentation for other people. That's how other people would have perceived me. Internally, I really struggle to put into words just how badly I thought about myself. One thing that I continually struggle to explain to people is how a mindset that you can be in, so the story that you tell yourself, your inner world, how that can feel. And it's very, very difficult to put that kind of feeling into words, but you are telling yourself a story that is absolutely, undeniably for you, the truth and is reflective of reality. So you're not, I feel a bit bad, but there's this logical reasoning, because logic doesn't work. There is the absolute truth of who you think that you are, and then everybody else is just wrong. If there's any positive thoughts about you or possible logical positive things, they just don't know the real truth. That is this truth that you store within yourself. I felt like at the core of my human being, so who I was as a human being, was shit, basically. When I eventually was open about this stuff, I described myself as a shit stain on the earth. And that's how I felt. I felt like nobody knew who I really was. I felt so unworthy, so not good enough. I felt like my life was a lie, and the minute that anybody found out what was really going on, I was going to lose everything. And like I said, I can't really get across to you how utterly complete and utterly reflective of reality that was for me. Like, there was no, but you have this great life. There was no, but these kids love you. My kids didn't know me. That's how I felt at the time. Since then, that's changed, but it's an absolute, very definite feeling. And I think that there's no way that I can be the only one that feels that way. And from people that I've come across, that's a common feeling, that there is this narrative that you tell yourself that is the absolute truth and everything else can't touch it, kind of thing. That's kind of where I was at the time. Now, a number of things happened in my life that made me feel like I could no longer keep up this pretense of this goodness. So I felt like the wife, the mother, the daughter, the friend, all of that was an act, because who I really was something I had to hide from everybody because it was this piece of shit. So it got to the point where I could no longer hide that anymore, and I was just so tired. I'd had years and years and years of trying to be this person, and one day everything just fell apart. And it kind of coincided with the end of my marriage. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but basically I felt like I couldn't pretend to be good anymore, couldn't pretend to be a good person anymore. And the reason why I pretended for so long was to try and keep hold of the things that I had in my life, because I felt like I didn't deserve them. And I felt like I'd never deserved everything to start with anyway, so it was inevitable that I would lose everything. And it was like the pretend world that everybody else saw, that I fronted, and my reality collided. And I couldn't see how I could possibly be acceptable to anybody if they knew who I really was, and it kind of became impossible to pretend anymore. So basically I went home and I took an overdose. Now, it wasn't premeditated. I hadn't really put a huge amount of thought or research into how best to go about it, and I ended up taking a lot of the same pills that ultimately did not do a lot. Like, I wasn't very good at it. The intent was definitely there though, and my husband was in the house and my father was, and they called an ambulance. The ambulance crew offered me the charcoal drink to neutralise the tablets I'd taken. I declined because I was still very intent that this is what I wanted to do, and I was taken to hospital for monitoring to make sure that I was okay. I have quite possibly done some irreparable damage to my liver, but I don't know, and they don't know either. That's something that may come out later in life. But there was no immediate damage at that point in time. I met with the crisis team in the hospital. My self-worth was so intrinsically bound up with what other people thought of me that the crisis team concluded that if my marriage was to completely break down, I would be at high risk of repeating my attempt to commit suicide, but that if my husband decided to stay with me, I might be okay. And I can't actually imagine the pressure that would have put on him, actually, to feel like he basically had my life in his hands, because I'm sure that meant his thinking was very, very difficult. I actually wrote my husband a note to give you an idea of the reality for me at that time. I actually wrote in that note that my husband would be better off with someone else for a wife because of how I felt I was in myself and the person I thought I was. And I wrote that my children would be better off with someone else as a mother because I was such a shit person. And I'm getting emotional remembering those words. And that's pretty much verbatim what I wrote. I'm getting emotional because it brings me so much grief now, looking back, to see how poorly I felt about myself and how completely and utterly wrong I was. But at the time I felt like it was the absolute truth. And if anybody is feeling that way about themselves, that they are to the core just a bad human, I can categorically tell you that you are wrong. Because I'd had counselling in the 6 months before that attempt, I didn't qualify for any further counselling on the NHS. So I got a private counsellor. It was obviously very severe that I needed to have some support. I saw a counsellor privately who to this day is the best investment that I have ever made. And that was when I started to unpick stuff. And when I started to work through why I felt that way about myself and whether that was reflective of reality or not. And this is where my spiritual stance, I suppose, helped a lot in a way, because I firmly believe that there is no universal you. Like, you does not exist. There's no concrete me and I and who I am. There are the perspectives of every single person that you have ever come across in your life. And then there is your own perspective. And the perspective and the story that I was stuck in was one version of that. But actually, the versions that other people perceived, this good mother, this good friend, this great daughter, they still existed. That person was still valid, whether I felt it or not. You know, I had brought up my children. I had succeeded in that way. But it took a lot, and it took a long time for me to get there and for me to really see that. I have often heard in the past judgmental comments around people with mental ill health who attempt to take their own life and how selfish they are. And I wanted to touch on that a bit, having had the experience that I've had and speaking to other people as well. But in my experience, deciding to make an attempt on your own life is without doubt, in my entire life, the most selfless thing I have ever done. And I'm sure that that's going to be met with some controversy because, like I said, there's a lot of judgment around that. But I felt like I was, to my core, a bad human being and I was worthless. And firstly, I couldn't understand how anybody else could love me. I just felt like they loved somebody that didn't exist. You know, they loved a friend that didn't exist. They loved a daughter that didn't exist. And I felt like it was selfish of me to want to stay alive because I was bringing up children who would be around me and who would suffer because of who I was. And I would only ever hurt and harm the people around me. The least selfish thing that I could possibly do was to let go of wanting to see my children grow up and instead to stop being so selfish, because I had no right to watch my children grow up, and instead to do the world a favour by checking out, basically. And getting upset because I'm a great mum and I know that now, but back then it was so all-encompassing, this utter belief that I would be doing the world a favour by not being here. And it makes me so sad, because I just think that if I felt like that, then guaranteed there are other people out there that feel that way, and it's just not true. The world is a better place because you're on it. You enrich people's lives more than you know, and no matter what you might think of yourself, there are so many other people who have really valid perspectives on who you are, how you make them feel, and the contribution that you make to this earth. And I can say all this now, having come out the other side of this, but at the time, if someone had said that to me, I wouldn't have believed them. No, but you don't know me, you know? And it's scary how absolute those feelings can be. So I knew I was gonna cry through this, but I'm not a pretty crier, so sorry. I was very, very blessed that I had this involvement with this private therapist, but mental health services in this country generally suck. I know a lot of psychologists and a lot of counsellors who are very frustrated with the provision through the NHS. There are some charities that will offer support. There are workplaces that are offering more support. But as I've said before, if you were physically wanting to get well and you joined a gym, no one would say anything. So I really hope that can somehow rationalise that there's nothing to be ashamed of with going and seeing a therapist. It's strange to say now on reflection that that experience was basically the first day of my life. I know that that sounds so strange and also so kind of cliched and so kind of shit, but as I said, I had this feeling like there was the truth, there was who I really was, and then there was this projection, and the two didn't align, and so much tiredness and pain and lack of motivation and sadness and disruption and anger and guilt and shame and everything came from trying to constantly project that and trying to constantly be that. It was like an unattainable thing that I kept trying every single day. And the day that I tried to take my own life was the day that I just broke all of that. There was no projection anymore. There was no trying to be somebody that I wasn't. I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I then just became the piece of shit that I thought I was. Like I just totally embraced it, like, yep, this is who I am. It was at that base level where I started to really understand that, oh, wait a minute, this base level, who I think I am I really a piece of crap? Why do I feel this way? What's happened? What's contributed to this? When do I feel this? What is the reality? What do other people think of me? Could that be true? You know, kind of all of those questions and all of that curiosity came from the moment that I stopped trying to be somebody else and just accepted who I was. And regardless of whether I accepted myself as unworthy or bad or whatever, I wouldn't be able to get to the point I am now had I not accepted myself completely, and then got curious, and then became aware, and then actually worked out that the reality, the actual reality, was very, very different from the story that I'd been stuck in for most of my life. I know I've touched far more there on the mentality than the actual event, because I think that we often get fixated on the event, you know, what actually happened, tell me the narrative. And really, for mental health, it's not really about the narrative, it's about the feelings. And with this video, I wanted to highlight some of the very real feelings that people with mental ill health can feel. And it doesn't matter what you think of someone and what position you think that they're in, because really it's nothing about that. You know, I'm sure that other people looked at me and thought that I had all my life together, that I had ticked off so many boxes on things that should make people happy. And happiness is not a checkbox exercise. Like, you don't have any idea what someone is going through, and you can be the closest to someone in the world. You can be their partner, you can be their best friend, you can be their mum, their sister, their relative, and you can still not know what's going on. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I wanted to talk about this because I know it's just one story, that it's one more story out there than was out there yesterday, and maybe with enough stories, people will feel safe to be open and to seek support. I'm not going to tell you that how you're feeling is not valid, because it is. I'm just telling you that how you feel may not necessarily be reflective of reality, and you aren't alone. All is not lost. No matter how bleak things may seem, things change over time. And if I'd have known 2.5, 3 years ago the position that I would be in now, I wouldn't have told you that that was possible to be where I am now. I live an authentic life now. I am free now. And if life can align more positively for me, then it can align more positively for you too. If you are watching this and feeling the same way or similarly, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and that there's always people that you can speak to. And I hope that you can find either a safe person who you know that you can speak to, or there are other people available. And I'm not posting this video in an attempt to fix anyone. I just want people to know that this isn't a battle that you have to fight alone, because it can be an incredibly lonely place. So thank you guys for watching. It sounds weird for me to ask you to give this video a thumbs up, but if you want to, cool. I hope that wherever you are, you're keeping safe and well, and I will see you in the next one.